Going inside the issues of our community, this is Local 12 Newsmakers.
We want justice! What do we want? Yeah.
A dispute between high school students in Jena, Louisiana in August 2006 set off a chain reaction that at one point brought over 10,000 protesters pouring into the streets of the little town in the style of a 1960s civil rights protest. The question remains, have reactions been proportionate, and what does this tell us about the United States in 2007? Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Jena, Louisiana is a small rural town in central Louisiana of less than 3,000 people. In a student dispute over turf at the high school in August and September 2006, some white students hung 3 nooses from a tree on the school grounds. That sparked a fight, which in turn resulted in charges against 6 African American students by the LaSalle Parish prosecutor. That seemingly disproportionate legal response evoked a national reaction that brought between 10 and 20,000 demonstrators to Jena in September of 2007, and others into streets around the country, including Washington, D.C. Let's be clear, a noose is not some vague theoretical threat, but a very live part of the collective memory in the African American community. Between 1880 and 1960, over 4,700 African Americans were victims of lynching. Almost 90% of all lynching victims, although most incidents occurred in the South. Mobs in places like Duluth, Minnesota, Urbana, Ohio, and Marion, Indiana, all carried out lynchings. The Jena 6 include Robert Bailey, Jr., who's 17, Michael Bell, who's 17, Carwin Jones, who's 18, Bryant Purvis, who's 17, Theo Shaw, who's 17, and Jesse Beard, who's 15. I am joined this morning for the entire show by 4 women related to the Jena 6. Caseptla Bailey, I'm going to stumble over that, is the mother of Robert Bailey Jr. and is also the guardian of Theo Shaw. Catrina Wallace is Robert Bailey's stepsister and is secretary of the LaSalle Parish chapter of the NAACP. Melissa Bell is the mother of Michael Bell, and Tina Jones is the mother of Bryant Purvis. To all of you, welcome to Cincinnati. Welcome you to Local 12 Newsmakers.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that it's students from NKU, Northern Kentucky University, and Robin White at the National Park Service site, the William Hart Taft National Park Service site, who have coordinated your visits. Let me just ask, have you been doing this in other cities?
Yes, sir, we have.
So you've been traveling around. What's your hope? What do you hope to get out of this visit into Cincinnati?
Well, we hope for a change in Jena, LaSalle Parish, that will come from these visits across the country, letting people know what's going on in our small community.
So you're hoping for outside pressure to pressure the local situation in your own parish?
Well, we're first hoping for inside pressure, because we've done the inside pressure. We also look for outside pressure to come to Jena, Louisiana and make changes, in our justice system, school system, all around system there. Okay.
And Catrina, do you feel like that pressure has affected events already?
Yes, I feel that way. And also it's just not the pressure what's going on in Jena, but it's also to let people realize that it's okay to speak out about it if it's going on in your town too.
Okay. So not just in Jena.
Not just in Jena.
But seeing this as a pattern that
exactly.
has some echoes other places as well. I want to Melissa, ask you, because if I understand correctly, this past Monday, your son Michael, who's been the one who's been in jail, who's been through the court system in a couple of different ways, if I understand correctly, he pled guilty as a juvenile finally, not as an adult, but as a juvenile, and on Monday. How do you feel about this? What's your feeling about where Michael's case stands at this point?
I feel good because we went from 75 years in an adult facility down to 18 months in a juvenile facility. It was also reduced from 2 felonies down to a misdemeanor, so actually I feel good about it.
In fact, let me just review that history a little bit for people. One of the Jena 6, Michael Bell, has been through the court system. At first he was charged as an adult with attempted murder. Now, eventually, that had to be reduced to aggravated second-degree battery, but he was found guilty of that in adult court. An appeals court then threw that out, and he was told the courts to send him back to juvenile court, and then on Monday there was this agreement. So you basically feel good about this.
Yes.
The one part of the agreement, as I understand it, as I read about it, is that he's agreed to testify if the other 5 students come up in court. How does he feel about that? How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel that actually it's nothing that can hurt the kids, because when Michael said that he didn't see anything, so it's nothing that he can tell against other kids. So it's nothing that's going to hurt them because he didn't see anything.
How do you feel about this? How does your son about this particular turn in this case?
Well, he called me because, I didn't tell him because I didn't want to upset him, but of course, news get around fast. So he called and asked me about it, and I told him not to worry, that I had spoken with Melissa, and Michael told, what, part he played in it, and he did not speak out against the other boys. So, I'm confident that it's not going to affect Bryant's case one way or the other.
Why do you think Michael Bell has been through this whole process and the other 5, they haven't been taken in, they have not been tried yet, as I understand it. Is that right? Why this disparity?
Well, I think just my personal opinion, because Michael had another juvenile, case that they was holding over his head. So I think they used that and tried to make an example out of him with the other boys. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you expect that at some point your son Robert is going to face some sort of formal court hearing?
Of course I expect that.
Okay.
I really do expect he's going to face that. But I'm prepared for that.
How are, let me ask about the others besides Michael for a moment. How are the others holding up? What is their situation? Are they in school? They're in a very awkward situation. What's happening with them?
Well, actually, Robert and Theo have been going through a long process of trying to return to school.
The same school?
No, sir, not the same, not Jena High School.
Okay.
And that process have been taken care of. We've come to a conclusion, and they have received credit for those classes that they were passing at Jena High School. Mm-hmm. So they're going to enter into another school. Okay.
In a school in the community, or are they going to have to move someplace?
A school out of the community.
Out of the community.
Yes.
I know you have a role with the local NAACP. Am I correct? That's the way I introduced you.
Yeah.
What do you think has been the role not only of your local organization, but of national organizations in terms of being effective in helping move this process along for the students?
I think I don't think it's an organizational thing. It's just a community-wide thing. Once people start caring about something, it's a family. It becomes a family then.
Okay.
I mean, that's white, black, it doesn't matter. And far as the organizations go, you're going to get them, you're going to pull them in to help you, to assist you. But if you're not doing nothing, and if you're not making noise, no one's going to pay any attention to you anyway.
In your mind, the sequencing of events, what do you think are the key events back in the beginning? Not the court parts of this, but the key events back in the beginning. How would you explain that? How did that trigger all of that's happened since the fight, let's say? From the beginning, whatever you think the beginning is, through the fight. How would you explain that?
It started with the nooses. You have to begin there, but then it goes further back than that. You have to look at the town of Jena. You have to go back and look. How was Jena ran before this happened? Before this happened, we were going through these type of things.
And what did all or some of you go to Jena High School?
We did.
You all?
We all
Okay. One of the things I'm not totally clear on was it's talked about as this tree that was on the campus is described as a place that only whites could sit under. It was a white tree, a white sort of turf. Is that the way you experienced it when you were in high school?
The tree wasn't there when we were in
okay.
high school. But there were black and white issues. We sit on one side. Everything else was the same, but we just didn't have the white tree.
Okay, the tree wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Before this incident took place, did you hear your sons or stepbrother or whatever, did you hear them talking about this as the white tree before this actually happened?
I didn't
didn't.
personally. No, I didn't.
No, not particularly.
I've never known to be a white tree. As a matter of fact, Catrina Wallace and two of her white friends planted that tree.
You planted the
when
tree.
she was in
And
high
yeah,
school.
that's where we would sit. We would plant flowers or whatever, and we sat there. You know, we would sit. It wasn't a white tree.
It wasn't.
And it wasn't a tree when we put
When
it
you-
there.
okay.
It was a shrub, and we just set it there along with some flowers. But it wasn't a tree there. I mean, it wasn't a tree to say it's a white tree because.
Do you believe, though, that that had been sort of appropriated by the white students, that they had sort of claimed
yeah,
that?
because like Miss Tina was saying, you have blacks on one side of the campus and you have whites on the other side of the campus. So here this tree is in the middle of the campus, and you know they are the majority of the school.
You know, here's the incident as I understand it. Okay, there is this claim of turf, and some of the black students wanted to sit under the tree, and the principal or the officials in the school said, well, yeah, I mean, we're not dividing things up. So they went, they sat under the tree, or they whatever. And then there was this reaction by the white students that then the nooses came. Is that correct? Then the nooses came, and then how long from the time the nooses were hung till this fight that has really become the sort of key point here?
Less than a month. The nooses were hung in November, and the fight happened December 1st, part of December 4th.
Okay. And was it the fight, was it that your sons knew who was really behind those nooses, or were they just guessing, or was it just common knowledge in the high school?
No, it was found out that who really hung the nooses, the boys. I think they've done a little investigation, and the boys actually said that they done it.
Okay. And so then there is this fight, and then the charges come. And
Well, no,
key-
actually,
no,
it was,
actually,
yeah.
It's a lot.
It's
more.
a lot
lot
leading
more.
up to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Leading
I'm
to
sorry.
that.
Go ahead.
Melissa, you probably.
No, it's a lot leading up to that fight besides the nooses being hung. The first step was that when the nooses were hung, that nothing was done about it. That was the first outrage in the community. That was nothing done about it. And they brushed it off that it was just a little childhood prank. But the kids nor the parents and the black people didn't see it as being a prank because what we went through. So the different parents in the community had different meetings and different things, and we tried to bring a conclusion to it, but no one wanted to hear about it. None of the higher white officials wanted to hear about it. It was just to be brushed off.
In fact, in relationship to this, I'd like to read a quote from the local prosecutor, because I think it says a lot about what his thought. This is something he wrote, by the way, in the New York Times just in September of this year. And this is Reed Walters, the district attorney. He said, "I cannot overemphasize how abhorrent and stupid I find placing the nooses on the schoolyard tree. It was mean-spirited and deserves condemnation of all decent people. But it broke no law. Therefore," he goes on to say, he's not going to do anything about it. And so the point was, he's arguing that in Louisiana law, there was no such thing as a hate crime or incident that covered this, and therefore he couldn't do anything about that, but he could bring these very stiff charges, attempted murder, on your sons. Is that correct?
Well, what about a moral law?
We did find out.
You know,
that one of
this if it's not a law that's by the, established by the state of Louisiana, what about morally? You know, that this type of thing would happen. And then when it does happen, as Melissa said, those in positions, can do something about the issue, can do some type of punishment to let the students, if nothing else, to let the African American students, white students, Indian students, or whatever that's at Jena High School, to let them know, hey, we're not going to tolerate this type of act.
Exactly.
This is something that we're not going to allow to happen here at Jena High School. And I think this is something that needs to be dealt with, if not by law, at least by the school administration.
Okay.
So a lot of things could have been taken care of.
But it is a law in Louisiana because one of the lawyers did tell us that it is in Louisiana that it's a law against hanging nooses, because if it was put in a threat or intimidation wise, it's a law. But they just didn't pursue it, but it is a law in Louisiana.
They chose not to see it as a threat.
Right.
So your point is that from the prosecutor's point of view, he's arguing that from a legal point of view, he didn't have the right to, or he didn't choose to. proceed ahead, but you're saying that the school officials should have done anything. Have the school officials done anything?
Well, the students were given in-school suspension, and they were allowed to continue their education by attending the discipline center in LaSalle Parish.
The white students?
Yes, the 3 identified white students.
Okay.
And as time went on, they had what is called an expulsion hearing. And from that expulsion hearing, the principal, Scott Wyndham, said that they should be expelled for the remainder of the school year, where the superintendent, Roy Brigham, who has power over the principal, said that it would be best that they be returned back to school because it was considered a prank, it was considered a joke. And those type of issues, that's what we've had problems with.
It's this disparity between the two things.
You know, if if something was started in the wrong way and you're not don't correct it immediately, it's going to add more fuel to the fire and it's going to build up and explode. And that is what continued to lead to December 4th.
Okay, and which is the fight, December the 4th.
Yes.
I have to take a break, but stay right here. Stay tuned. After the break, a look at the impact of these developments.
The world is not seeing the real picture of Jena High School. I feel like we here do our best to get along with all genders, races, and kinds, and we do here on the school campus.
We're not a racial town. We get along with each other, get along fine. I mean, this is something that's just got out of proportion. It really has.
Welcome back. I'm joined here this morning by the mothers and stepsister of counting guardian 4 out of 6 of the Jena 6. So anyway, let's get back to this. Both going out of that first segment and coming back in here, we heard 2 different people, white people who live in Jena, say, this is the wrong picture of Jena, this is not what it is. All of you have grown up there or lived there a substantial part of your lives. What was Jena before all of this happened? What can you tell us about what the community was like in terms of racial relations?
Like we were saying earlier, you have your blacks on one side of town, you have your whites on the other side of town. White and blacks get along. All white people not bad, all black people not bad. You know, you have good black people, you have bad black people. But I mean, we never just intermingled. We stayed on. We say where we were from. They say where they were from. We see them. When we go to town, we see them, talk, come home. That's it. But we never, nothing that we ever did was together.
What about in workplaces? Do people get together in workplaces because they're in the same office, they're in the same factory? What about there?
Well, they know you at work, but after work, you know, they don't know you. You know, when you in town, they walk past you and don't know you.
Basically, Jena was comfortable with being Jena until, you know, this did happen and it was exposed. So as long as it was just kept swept under the rug, it was okay for them. But now that it's nationwide, now that's what they mad about. It's not about whether, you know, what was happening before. It was just, as long as they were comfortable living like they were.
And then sometimes you have to look at it that, you know, some people get so comfortable and live in a certain way they don't even realize.
Yeah, and
there's a problem.
They don't realize it's a problem. Me, myself, I realize because I've left Jena, been back to Jena. Melissa, Tina, we've all been out of Jena. But some people from Jena never left Jena.
So they don't have any point of perspective.
They don't even know what's going on out there, you know, that there's a change, people get along, you know.
In this whole process over the last, year and a half or whatever, have some friendships, alliances, collaborations across racial groups with either on individual level or church levels or anything, have some people been brought together, or is it only push people apart?
As Trina said earlier, it's not everybody, but the ones that do say it, they want to do it to the side. But when it come out in front, you know, other white people, they don't want to let us know. But, you know, some of the ministers have became, you know, got an alliance, but it's only certain few that, you know, go to it or whatever. But, you know, some want to make a change and some don't.
Okay. So it's still that
Jena mentality.
Yes,
okay.
it is.
Don't see it breaking down. It's only being
not
on the national level too. I mean, there have been. It's not only the local prosecutor, the district attorney, but it's also this has become a national issue. And I want to play some sound bites from a congressional hearing. Can we hear that, please?
Although the conduct is deeply disturbing and offensive. We declined to pursue charges after learning that the nooses had been hung by juveniles who have been promptly sanctioned by the school.
Shame on you, because I believe that we have always looked to the federal government for the refuge and saving of those who have been discriminated against.
What's your reaction? How do you feel about the reaction by the federal government, by the rest of the nation, to the situation that you've found yourself in?
What make that any less of a crime just because they were juveniles? That don't make it better. That don't make it not a crime because they were juveniles. Juveniles commit crimes too. You know, 2 of our kids were juveniles, but they still felt the need to prosecute them. So what was the difference in prosecuting our juveniles than the white juveniles? That's what we're so upset about. That, okay, you feel a need that you want to prosecute the blacks, but what's wrong with the whites just because they're juveniles? That don't make it no better.
And then we talk about racism being a part of the white culture, you know, being racism toward the African American culture. You see an example for yourself, Mr. Donald Washington. You know, he's an African American man. He keeps racism alive within our African American race and within our culture because he allowed these things to continue, whether it's because of monetary reasons or because he's a Republican, because he doesn't feel that he has to answer to the black community. You know, so there are things that we need to know. Why is it that he feels that this is something that couldn't be taken care of? He said that it constitutes a hate crime. You know, what does that mean, constitutes a hate crime? Is it a hate crime or is it not? But then he wants to make excuses for, as Melissa said, not to prosecute those juveniles that did those things. Those have gone on with their lives. You know, one of them have graduated from high school. You know, the other one have left and doing homeschooling. You know, one of the kids have quit school, you know, but they have continued to go on with their life and to live their lives while our children seem to be stuck, you know, in disparity and trying to survive through all this injustice treatment that they've been receiving. Because I feel him being an African American male, he should be a better example for our young men and to do what is right, you know, politically.
Has any state or federal official, prosecutor, investigator, FBI, I don't know, whatever, any state or federal official come to any of your families and said, what's really going on here, and at least just asked the question before and heard your side of it?
Well, they had a town meeting back in the fall. The Department of Justice.
Department of Justice had a town meeting?
And had a town meeting. Carmelita Pope Freeman, along with Donald Washington and an FBI person came to.
So Donald
LaSalle
Washington,
Parish.
who we just heard, has been in Jena.
Yes.
Several times.
Several times. Have you had a chance to sit down with him
Not
privately?
personally.
He wasn't there because when he come, he's not for us. He's actually basically against us. So when he's coming, he's not for it.
Actually, we chose not to attend because, you know, why attend something that you know prior to receiving knowledge and prior to receiving prior to going to this event, you already know what the outcome is because he already stated that there's not a problem.
What about your congressional representative?
Yes, I did go to Washington and I had a meeting with them. We met, and that's basically one of the reasons that Michael was out for the 2 weeks that he was out. And yes, they have came to our aid. The Congressional Black Caucus did. The
Congressional Black Caucus, not necessarily your congressman.
Right.
Yeah, the congressman that represents Jena.
No, not him.
Okay,
no.
I'm just.
No.
No. Okay, I don't know who that is.
Well, we did have the local ones from down New Orleans way. We did have like one Fontaine or whatever. We had some of them that came from our local ones, like Jefferson. He came, yeah. They've been.
I've got about a minute and a half left. What do you expect? How is this going to play out from this point forward? What do you really think is going to happen?
I think that the truth, all from both sides need to come because they try to put Justin Barker out there as the perfect kid that he was.
Justin
innocent,
Barker is the student who, the white student who got beat up.
Yes, they try to put him out there as the innocent victim, but he's not. He's a boy, he's a teenager. He does things that teenage boys does. Just for instance, he came to school with a loaded shotgun. They labeled that as what?
Loaded shot. That incident took place before or after?
After the December 4th fight in May.
And then what happened?
He got arrested and he had a $5,000 bond, but no one's heard that in court anymore. So
it hasn't gone anywhere.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. And I'm really aware of time. What do you think, especially for Michael? What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, Michael's gonna get to school and get hopefully get on with his life after all this is over with, and so with the rest of the boys, which we still have this little suit hanging over our head. But hopefully, all these kids can soon get back to their lives.
And you're actually hoping that he gets moved to a halfway facility?
Well, he's going to go to a group home. Yes.
Okay, very good. I want to thank you for being here this morning, being so
Thank
forthright, and thank you for coming to Cincinnati and telling your story. And thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, I will be joined by the new head of the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. Have a good week. Thank you very much.